Okay. I can say that at my advanced age, I have lived through more recessions than anyone else in this room. And I do know that what Mike said was how we operated. We had 260 shows a year in our portfolio, and our top 10 or our top 20 shows, we had the space signed up for next year in spite of any recession that we were going through, because it was critical for us to be marketing at that event to grow the corporation, and that was just how it is. So, and I'm sure all of you agree. So,
yeah,
okay.
If the show's performing, then there's you should be there.
And I would say that all of us agree. The challenge sometimes is getting our CEOs to agree on that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Are you having any more or less difficulty? This was not one of the prepared questions, by the way. Do you have more or less difficulty with your top management? Are they still supportive, or are you having more difficulty in selling events?
Since I made that comment, I'll respond first and
Thank you.
say that it's on my mind because in our company we go through a rotation schedule. When you're working at least in our company, I don't know about all of Japan, but when you reach 65, you're gone. You're out of there. So we have a new president, and he did not have the same philosophy that our former president had. So I've been working pretty hard on justifying expenses across the board for a lot of our marketing activities.
I feel for you.
Yeah.
I really,
Yeah.
I'm hoping he's older.
Anyone else comments? I mean, no change.
That we've all talked about metrics forever, and often we measure, sometimes we don't measure. It goes through cycles of when people are paying attention to measurement. But now that the economy and the finances and what have you, measurement has now become the hot button again. And so, yes, they're looking at it from metrics and ROI and some other things like that. So we're having discussions, and we're having to do a lot of justification and a lot of, like I said, kind of dancing to repackage what we're doing so that we can stay where we think it's important.
Yeah.
And get them to not just arbitrarily say it's done. So.
Of course, the irony of that is, even though metrics are hot now,
right.
if you weren't doing them when they were not hot, you wouldn't have the information for when they need to be hot.
That's a very good point. Thank you.
To that point, we started off on this journey, and really it's 8 years ago that the Raytheon all came together. But I'll tell you, Bob, the two and a half, 3 years ago, we started on this journey with measurement. And there's two things. It can be measured, and the perception is. I can truly say that I think our CEO gets it. And I think that we've got disciples in the businesses, and I think they get it. They see that if the work is done up front, if they're starting to pay attention here. I don't know if it's just been this way. It's one of those little incremental positives you take out of some of these shows, but you come back and you say, they do get it. We're making the most out of these events.
Well, let me jump ahead here, because the show organizers are focusing more on helping you increase your ROI, which is return on investment. I don't think anyone in the room does not know that. Let's talk about this, about working with them for shows on your schedule. We'll go back to the other questions in a minute. But this measurement thing, and because you all have to do it, and you kicked it off here. Do you find that show organizers are really aiding and abetting you in your measurement process within your programs?
The show organizers you're talking about?
Yeah.
The larger ones.
Some are and some aren't.
Some aren't, but the larger ones.
Yeah. I think in
want to name names? No, I'm kidding.
I think there's some in our industry, at least. I sense, and sometimes talking to like this team up here, the one thing that we struggle with, and it's just one part of it, is audits. Part of these shows, and even the electronic tracking customers, tracking information, everything else. I feel sometimes the defense and aerospace is in the dark ages. Yeah. There is just no electronic connection. Even these mingle sticks and some of that, introducing that to a show organizer in the defense and aerospace, they probably go, well, what's that?
By the way, thank you for saying mingle stick. At the end of the session, if you still have your mingle stick, please turn it in. Thank you. Okay, going back.
Very good.
That's good advertisement there.
Sorry. Anyone else comment? ROI. I was asking you about working with show organizers to help, and the audit is the key thing. Emma did this. Raise your hand and promise. Put your one hand over your heart and raise your other one, and promise to do something. I wish everybody in this room would write to every show organizer that you have a participation with, and ask them to provide audited attendance in the future. And if we all did that, I think we could get this whole movement finally off the ground. It's got to start. We have to be able to do it. The Europeans do it, even though we question some of the numbers. But anyway, no, yes.
I have to say that that's one of my big hot buttons. I've tried to push that a little bit with the few organizers that don't, the ones that don't do it so much. The larger shows I'm at CES and CTIA and CTIA, they're doing it. So, but unfortunately, it comes out 6 months after the show. So, and I've already made my commitment at the show.
Right.
So you have to look at historical data and what have you. But I do think that if we could get everybody to do that, it would be so much better, because it really is important that you've got, between the demographics and the other things that you get from them, and those larger shows have been good about providing me information when I needed it.
Exactly.
And it's great to be able to say that stuff and put it in pretty little graph chart,
Does it make a difference for the two of you, audited or non-audited?
Absolutely, it makes a difference if it's audited. And I know RSNA has been doing some wonderful things. They, a couple of years, tried installing cameras in the ceiling at McCormick Place and having a company do traffic flow metrics. And they actually show what time of the day the hall is busy, and how, when people enter the hall, do they go right or left, and when do they get to the middle of the hall, and when do they get to the back of the hall, and they're giving the exhibitors that kind of feedback. They've also been experimenting with RFID technology and letting exhibitors buy into that, so you can try the RFID in your booth. And we've done some things with that. So I think
You've
that's
been able to do things with that using, okay. And you too, Jim?
RFID has given us some very good data inside of our exhibit. I mean, there's pluses and minuses. You can't take everything as gospel, but it has given us much better information than we've ever had about the activities inside of our space.
Good.
That's great.
Yeah.
You too. Okay. We're jumping around here only because we don't have a lot more time. We're getting up toward the end here, and I just want to go into some other things here. I'm going to the studies confirmed that 46% of all exhibitors set objectives. Sadly, only half, or 23%, follow through with them. First of all, I know you all set objectives, but why do you think people don't follow through with them? That's my question. I can't imagine if you say, this is what we're going to do at the RSNA show, for example, and then they don't do it. What happens? Any thoughts?
Yeah, does it help if you only set objectives for half your shows? Because really, that's what we do. We set objectives for our program, but not all the small shows. We just don't take the time to do that for every single small exhibit we need to go to. Because some of them are relationship support or supports of the organization and the individuals that are there. But I think it's because maybe they don't know how to set objectives well. Perhaps there's no measurements tools in place to help them get there. Or perhaps they're unrealistic objectives that are set, of which you have no control over. For example, you may say that I'm going to get some qualified leads that result in X number of sales, but you have absolutely no control over the sales channel. Well, that's just unrealistic. You should set your objectives accordingly.
Anyone else?
That's kind of the same thing. We don't really have a window to what sales and the business units necessarily are doing about that. They give us the general objectives, but we'd like to see some much more quantifiable, measurable objectives that even we can help them with, as opposed to the other way around. But we don't have a response. We don't have the sales revenue tracking and things like that so many do. We have a lot of long lead times, but at the same time, it's just not. We don't talk to each other quite as much as we'd like. So between marketing and sales, it's always been that issue. And they don't feel we need to be in their business, and vice versa. There's certain things, but if we had a little more, we're starting to do that more. We're using a lot of the electronic systems where the tracking is a lot better than it used to be, and we're funneling things in. And so I think again, because the hot button is measurement this year, I think we're getting to a place where, with our company in particular, that we will see a little more of that transparency, and that potentially we can help them with some of those objective setting and really get some hard ROI, not the soft ROI that we've been getting, in the past.